Hey there, welcome back to Limabean Living. If you guys are new here, my name is Emily. Welcome to my motherhood channel where I take care of all things mom. I apologize for my voice. I'm dealing with a bit of a cold, and so I don't sound like I normally do. We're starting off today's video by painting a little box from the Dollar Tree, and unfortunately, we're not really doing this for a happy reason. The purpose of this box is sadly to bury the remains of what was supposed to be my rainbow baby. And so in today's video, you're going to see kind of that process of creating this miniature casket, letting my children paint the box for their sibling, and we're going to bury the baby in our backyard. And so while you're watching that, I'm going to be sharing a little bit of my experience and how I'm doing. So for those of you guys who have been following along, you knew that in 2023, I miscarried my third baby. We named that baby Taylor. And then on Christmas evening of 2024, I found out that I was pregnant again. And my pregnancy for the first few weeks of, actually finding out, when you find out you're kind of like 4 or 5 weeks pregnant. So those first couple of weeks seemed pretty normal for me. I am blessed to not have really like morning sickness, but any tiny cramp or feeling that I had in my body caused me anxiety because I just really did not want to lose this baby. And so up until January 19th, which was 2 days after my birthday, I was feeling pretty normal. But then on that evening, I went to the restroom and I noticed some like pink discharge, and that caused me to get extra anxious. I've never had that in my prior pregnancies, but I, obviously went to Dr. Google, and it was, said that it could be common to have some like spotting or pink discharge or something like that. So I tried to write that off because in my first and, my only experience with the miscarriage, I found out that there was no heartbeat, and weeks later, I finally started to bleed, and then I passed the baby the next day. And so I really, I tried to write it off, but the pink discharge kind of was happening off and on for the next couple of days. And then I'm going to share some TMI stuff, so skip ahead to the timestamp on the screen if you don't want to hear any like really gross stuff. But for the purposes of, maybe helping someone else out or whatever, I had to use the restroom, and I was a bit constipated. So it was definitely like a struggle to go number 2. Again, I'm sorry for the TMI, but that was when some blood came out. And I again went to Dr. Google and looked that up and saw that that was common, or that could be common for pregnancies. So again, I really tried to write it off. I went to buy some more pregnancy tests to see if the levels were dropping and the lines maybe weren't as dark. But the pregnancy tests that I kept taking still had a very pregnant, they were still very dark and very pregnant like signs. But after using the restroom that one time, it was I think a Wednesday, and I started the pink discharge on a Sunday. About a couple days later, the bleeding kind of hadn't stopped. It was almost every time that I was going to the restroom, I was noticing a little bit of blood. And like I mentioned before, my only other experience with a miscarriage was, everything perfectly normal, and then I just start bleeding one day and I pass the baby. So this experience seemed very strange, obviously different from the first time. So I reached out to my doctor, and they just said, you should go to the emergency department so that we can, get you checked out, which I was a little frustrated with. I was hoping that they could just make an appointment for me to be seen without me having to go to the emergency room. But I took their advice and I drove to the hospital. My mother-in-law was nice enough to come and be with the kids, and I went to the hospital by myself. My husband had a dentist appointment that afternoon, and I figured, when he's done, hopefully I'll have been seen and, we can kind of know what's going on. And I just had to really remind myself, like, I had to do like verbal affirmations on my drive to the hospital because I don't like new experiences. I've never had to check myself into the emergency room like on my own at this hospital. So I had to figure out like, okay, where am I going to park? I went and, was walking to the emergency room by myself, and I felt so alone. It was just an incredibly like lonely feeling. Even though I know that I have family who I was texting and letting them know what was happening, and I know that they all care for me, I just felt so lonely. So anyways, I get to the emergency department and it is like packed in there. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I'm glad I came when I came instead of waiting for Juan to get off of work and get home from his dentist appointment. And I was thankful that they said, any chance you're pregnant? And I was like, actually, that's why I'm here. I think I'm having a miscarriage. So they said, okay, you're actually going to want to go up to the OB floor and be seen up there. So they escorted me up to where, it's like labor and delivery. And they, took my information, took my blood pressure, like kind of the vitals that you would expect. And then they, asked me to wait in the waiting room until I could be seen. And this first waiting period didn't seem to take too long. I was there for a little while, but then finally, I got called back and I was like, great, like I'm going to be able to maybe get an ultrasound and see what's happening. And I sit down, this woman's like asking me about information of like my prior pregnancies, and she's like getting things mixed up and I'm having to like correct her. And meanwhile, just in the back of my head, I'm like, can someone just do an ultrasound and see what's going on? So I was like subtly annoyed. I'm usually very patient, especially with people I don't know. But I was, really sad and scared and just wanted to be taken care of. So anyways, they drew my blood and then they said, we're going to see if the doctor wants you to get an ultrasound. So in the meantime, go back and wait in the waiting room. And I remember seeing a post from someone saying like, can there be a separate waiting room for people dealing with miscarriages? Because you're surrounded, like when you go to your doctor's appointments and stuff, you're surrounded by people who are pregnant and who are like obviously pregnant or babies coming out of the rooms. And it can just be really sad and a struggle not to feel jealous. So that was something that crossed my mind. And then while I was waiting there, I realized like I didn't pack any food. I packed a charger, like a little battery pack thing for my phone, which I'm very glad I did, and I'll explain why in a bit. But I like didn't grab any snacks, and that was a huge mistake. But before I get too far into the story, I do just want to summarize what we've been seeing on the screen. I decided to just paint Jack's hand and give the casket a little like hand hug with his little handprint, and then Aubrey decided like what colors she wanted to fill in the other space of the box, and so that's kind of what we have been working on. But anyways, back to my story. So, I realized like I didn't pack any snacks, and I had been sitting there like in the waiting room. I want to say I got to the hospital at like 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon, and I didn't get called back in for my ultrasound until like I want to say 8:30 or 9. It was so late for me to just, like I'd gotten my blood drawn and my vitals checked, and then I was just sitting in the waiting room playing like games on my phone to keep my mind occupied. But I had no snacks. I had only eaten breakfast because I was trying to eat like twice a day. And so I was getting pretty hungry. And, when Juan was getting done with his dentist appointment, he said, like, should I come to you? And I was like, I'm just sitting here in the waiting room. There's really nothing going on. I advised him just to kind of go home and be with the kids and be with his mom. But then eventually I was like, you know what? Maybe you should come here and bring me some food because I'm very hungry. And because I was by myself, I didn't want to leave the waiting room to go get food in case they called me back. And, it was finally my time to be seen. So I was kind of in like a predicament because I was just by myself. So Juan, packed up some food that we had in the fridge. I just told him, like, grab whatever, a cold pizza. I don't care. Like, at this point, I'll eat anything. And he made his way to the hospital. And on his way over, like, they finally called me to go down and get an ultrasound, which originally they made it seem like I was just going to get an ultrasound on the labor and delivery floor, but instead they sent me down to like the main ultrasound floor where you can get better images. And so this guy like wheeled me down there in the wheelchair and then like dropped me off in this deserted hallway and said like, oh, someone will be with you shortly. And I hear like couple people maybe laughing at the very end of the hall in a room, but I was just like left alone until this other girl gets like wheeled in to be with me, like to also wait for an ultrasound. And then she got called back first. And I'm still waiting there, like still feeling pretty lonely. And finally, they call me back to like the room, and they did 2 types of ultrasounds. One was like on my stomach, and then one was like a vaginal ultrasound as well. And obviously, the people who are taking the images aren't going to tell you anything. But when they were, all done, they said, clean yourself up and we'll come back and, then tell you what to do or whatever. And so they left the room. And again, skip ahead to the timestamp if you don't want to hear details or whatever. But they left the room and I stood up and there was just like blood all the way down like the mats or whatever where they were doing the ultrasound or whatever. Like it looked like a crime scene. And it's like, I knew in my head, like, and my heart that this was not, this is not a normal pregnancy experience. And for, the days leading up to this, I had been trying to hang on hope that my baby was really fine, that maybe I was pregnant with twins and this is just what my body does with twins, or, like whatever it was, I was trying to hold on to hope. But by now, with all of the blood and the cramping and whatever, it was obvious that, my baby, must be dead. So I cleaned myself up and then made my way back to my wheelchair to wait for someone to wheel me back up to the OB floor. They gave me like a nice warm blanket, which was nice because, I was uncomfortable and it was a little chilly. And then I continued to wait for probably like another 2 or 3 hours, I want to say, for them to finally call me back and review things with me, review the images with me. And so when I was done with my ultrasound, Juan was waiting up in the waiting room for me, which was nice. I was able to scarf down like my pizza, my cold pizza, and whatever other things that he brought for me. And then I started to experience like kind of the cramping that I had with my first miscarriage. And so again, I'm going to share some TMI stuff. Skip ahead to the timestamp if you want to skip that. But I went to the restroom and I passed a very large, like kind of like a little jellyfish clot, which for me, that's kind of normal for after pregnancies and also with my last miscarriage. And so at home, I had prepared like this little cheesecloth barrier in my toilet in case a clot came out so I could try to find my baby. And I wouldn't have to like dig into the toilet to try to find the remains of my baby. But here I'm in the hospital, so I like roll up my sleeves and stick my hand down, and I couldn't see anything that resembled a baby. It just kind of looked like this coagulated blood. So I just flushed the toilet and washed my hands very well, and then made my way back to the waiting room to be with Juan. And, I could tell that he was sad. There wasn't much to talk about, and I was just getting very frustrated because I really didn't feel like cared for by the staff. I mean, I get like in general, the OB floor is a happy place. People are welcoming babies, and so you're hearing people laugh and whatever, and I'm over here in my little dark bubble really sad about this loss, this big loss for my family. And I'm just sitting there waiting. Again, I've been there since like 2 or 2:30 in the afternoon. And it's now like 10, 11 o'clock in the evening. And I finally had gotten just an ultrasound. And no one's calling me back. No one's checking on me. I think once or twice they came to the waiting room to take my blood pressure. And that was it. It was just, I just felt very uncared for. And so finally we get called to go in the back to see the doctor. And again, skip ahead if you don't want to hear this next part. But I could tell that I was going to pass like another big clot. So I was just like, can I have something to catch, whatever comes out of me? So they gave me like a toilet seat cover thing. And I was able, to use the restroom and catch the clots. And I kind of just took any of the clots, and they were able to give me a little cup that I could put it all in. And I believe was able to save a part that was the remains of my baby. It was very small, and it was a distinct kind of light brownish thing in a larger clot, but it was not nearly as clear as my miscarriage with Taylor. If you look back at that video, I share really everything and how it came out and whatever. So I was hoping to see something very clear and obvious so I could bury my child, but I just saved everything else and put it in a cup and set that aside. And so, finally, like, a doctor comes in, and to be honest, I don't really remember much else that led up to me having another ultrasound. They did another vaginal ultrasound, and in this image, they could not see the sac for the baby. But in the images that were in the computer from my ultrasound downstairs, there was obviously a little sac. So it was clear that in the time from that ultrasound to this ultrasound that I had passed the baby. So I was really hoping that what I had set aside in those cups was, my baby. And so, I kind of stayed in that room. They said, maybe we'll come and check on you and see how, if they're bleeding a lot or whatever for the next half an hour or an hour. And so my husband and I were just kind of in that room waiting, hearing laughter down the halls. Again, I recognize that in general, that's a happy place, but it was just hard to be in that happy place when I was not in a happy place. And so during our time in the waiting room and in this other room, I asked Juan, I was like, what are we going to name this baby? I like to try to come up with gender neutral names because, we never were able to find out the gender. With Taylor, I felt like my pregnancy symptoms suggested Taylor would have been a girl, and my pregnancy symptoms this time, I would have guessed this baby was a boy. But, we'll never know. But Juan has a YouTube artist that he just loves, and he has a song called Jamie or something like that, or it's written about a girl named Jamie, and this girl leaves him and he's just heartbroken. And so Juan was like, Jamie, I want to name this baby Jamie. And I was like, we're naming our baby after a girl, about a song about a girl. But he said, this song is about being brokenhearted because someone's leaving you. And he said that's how he feels about this baby. And so I was like, even though I kind of felt like this pregnancy, that I was having a boy, this song may be written about a girl and a girl named Jamie, but I always can think of little Jamie in One Tree Hill, if any of you guys watch that series. But anyways, I was like, okay, we'll go ahead and name this baby Jamie. So anyways, by, that time, I had been sitting in the hospital. I felt like I was pretty good to go. So, I walked down the hall and just told the nurses, look, I think I'm good. I don't think I need to stay here much longer. And so they just made sure another doctor came and saw me, and they said, that I should still go to what was supposed to be my first appointment with my OB, which was going to be like the following week or something. They also mentioned that my baby was measuring about like 6 weeks or something like that. So there was at least a good 1 to maybe 2 weeks of me knowing I was pregnant and the baby was alive. And so I'm really glad that I was able to, have that experience of knowing I was pregnant and still having the baby actually be alive inside of me. But anyways, they gave me my discharge papers and we were heading to our cars at like after midnight. So it was a very long and lonely and sad afternoon for me. Again, I was thankful my mother-in-law was able to be with the kids because I was obviously definitely not anticipating it would take that long to just have an ultrasound and be seen. But anyways, we made our way home and I was able to, go to sleep and try to move on with my day. I made sure then eventually to go to Dollar Tree and, purchase this little box. And we already had a bunch of paint, so I could at least have that all, ready to go. But in the days that followed, and even in the days leading up to me going to the hospital, I was just kind of really sluggish. And one thing that I, discovered felt nice and kept the kids kind of busy was I would sit on our reclining chair. I would recline and they would just pile blankets on top of me. And I have a couple pictures here just to kind of show you guys what I mean. The kids piled blanket upon blanket upon blanket. And that pressure, that external pressure on my body, felt like a hug that I needed. And it was actually comforting to have all of that pressure. So I recommend, if you have kids and you're going through a miscarriage and, they have so much energy and, you want to keep them busy, I suggest doing that. However, it was really tempting to just fall asleep or then you get really sweaty. So there are some downsides, but that was a funny experience and it did kind of feel nice. But, a few days later, my parents, decided to change their doctor's appointments and their plans and they made their way out to see me, which was really nice. And so that was the day that I'm filming here. They were really helpful in being with the kids and allowing me to kind of get the little grave site ready. And then they were able to, witness our little burial service for Jamie. But with all this being said, this is kind of the reason it has been very difficult for me to get videos out for you guys, especially in the days that followed. I was just very unmotivated. My family is the most important thing to me. And as much as I love YouTube, I can't let YouTube take away from our family and my healing. And so, it was just really hard for me to film anything or find the energy to edit a video and post it. So if anyone was curious, what is up with me and this channel or whatever, that's why. I do have one more video currently filmed, and that will be probably my next and last video for a while. It's just kind of like a day in the life and me finally on my first day of feeling more energized or, more able to get things done around the house. And so that will be my next video that I'll be posting, is just kind of sharing that and then sharing more things about what went on at my doctor's appointment, my following doctor's appointment and whatnot. But we are going to end this video here. Again, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. I'd like to thank you for your continued prayers. Please pray that, God can either bless us with a healthy baby in the future. I am getting older and we'd really like a bigger family. But ultimately, please pray that I can be joyful and happy with whatever God's will is. I do make a point to thank Him for my 2 healthy children because I know that they are blessings. And, while I might feel a little bit jealous of people with larger families, I have recognized that there are people who might be jealous of my family of 2. And so I'm really trying to just be grateful that God has blessed me with 2 children on earth. And now I have 2 in heaven as well. So thank you again for your prayers, and I will see you guys in my next video. Woohoo! You've made it to the end of the video. If you didn't know already, every Monday and Friday, you can find motherhood and lifestyle content on this channel. And since us moms have to do it all, that may mean yummy recipes, easy DIYs, mom hacks, cleaning and organization, or just a combo of everything. Please know that you are loved and you are made for greatness, and I will catch you in the next one.